Good morning, church. Today is day 19 of our 40 days of prayer challenge, and I have been loving this journey, and I hope you guys have been too. And I pray that as you've been sowing for the last 19 days, that God has been speaking to you, He's been showing you things, He's been revealing things to you during this time that have changed the way that you live, the way that you see this time and this season of our lives during this pandemic. And today I'm going to be speaking a little bit about memorial offerings. Acts 10 verse 4 says, "Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God." And what are memorial offerings exactly? I had to ask that question myself while I was preparing. And I think when we think of a memorial, we think of it in terms of like a celebration of someone's life who might have passed away, or a kind of monument dedicated to a particular time in history that may be something that shaped the way we live today or the way that we do things today. The Australian War Memorial, for example, in Canberra is an example of such a monument. And it's a stunning piece of architecture, very strong, very beautiful, built with huge blocks of sandstone. And it houses all of the names of the people who lost their lives in the pursuit of freedom during the many wars that Australia has been a part of. And the words "lest we forget" line the various halls of the monument. And those words are a reminder to all Australians that we should never forget the cost of the freedoms that we have today. And in a similar way, every time we utter a prayer before God, no matter how big or how small, we're actually building a monument to Him. Every prayer we pray is like each sandstone block of the war monument, similar to the one in Canberra. And those prayers will not be forgotten. They're not perishable. They're not made of wood or straw. They are the foundations of gold, silver, and precious metals. And they will not be forgotten, and they will not go unanswered, because this is how precious our prayers are to God. When we pray, our prayers have no limitations of time or space. We see them that way because we're limited by time or space. But God exists outside of time and space, and therefore He can answer our prayers outside of these dimensions, which is difficult to wrap our heads around sometimes. Because the struggle for us comes because we never know when His timeless answers are going to re-enter the present atmosphere of our lives. But this thought should actually fill us with a sort of holy anticipation, because it means that God has infinite answers for our infinite prayers, and He can actually answer them more than once. He answers them forever. And we should never underestimate God's ability to answer anytime, any place, anyhow. I actually want to read one of the stories that was in the book that I think perfectly explains this concept. Wayne's grandmother raised 12 children while managing their household. After every meal she prepared, she would go into her bedroom to pray. 3 times a day, the children could hear her interceding for them by name. When she was on her deathbed at the age of 91, the entire family gathered at the family home. She invited them into the bedroom where she prayed 3 times daily. Then she prophetically declared to her 12 children, "I'm going to die, but the power of my prayers will come to pass in each of your lives." Her predominant prayer was that every member of her family would surrender their lives to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. At the time, only 6 of her 12 children were following Christ, and 6 weren't, and that was 15 years ago. The tally is now 10 yes and 2 not yet. This next part of this story is how the oldest child came to know Christ. His name was Johnny. And a month ago, his next door neighbor had a dream in the middle of the night about him. The neighbor felt compelled to invite him to church, and he accepted the invitation that Sunday, which happened to be Palm Sunday. When he walked into the church, all he could hear was his mother's voice calling out his name in prayer. The pastor asked if anybody wanted to put their faith in Jesus, and Johnny raised his 92-year-old hand and said yes. And he got baptized the next weekend on Easter Sunday. If you do the math, his mother had prayed for him from the day he was born until the day she died, which was around about 84,315 memorial offering prayers. She didn't get to see the answer to her prayers on this side of the space-time continuum, but she will be one of the first people to greet her son when he steps into eternity. And that is the absolute miracle of our memorial prayers. They don't die when we do. God answers them forever. They continue building that monument to him, and he will never forget them. We may never know when our prayers will be answered, and we will also never know when we might be the answer to somebody else's prayer. When we live by faith, we'll harvest prayer seeds that may have been planted decades or even centuries ago. And when we live by faith, those memorial offerings turn into crowns of glory, and prayer offerings then turn into praise offerings. God bless you, church.